Hello guys, this is your friend and we are back with a new fanfic. Which is what if Naruto was banished from Konoha and he became new Raikage Part 1. And if you enjoy this fanfic then please press the like button and subscribe to my channel for more fanfic like this. And now let's start the fanfic. The retrieval team that went after the traitor Uchiha Sasuke returned with success. Of the 6 that were originally sent out to retrieve the Uchiha, 4 were critically injured, 1 was badly injured, but was not in any serious danger, and the remaining member had only a broken finger. Despite the various injuries they suffered, they were all healing amazingly well without any lasting damage, thanks to the brilliant medical skills of the Godime Hokage, Tsunade, the Slug Queen. Konoha Hospital. It had been several days since Team Shikamaru had returned from their successful S-class retrieval mission. Uchiha Sasuke now lay in a hospital bed, strapped down with his chakra temporarily sealed off, along with his Sharingan. His curse seal was personally sealed by Jiraiya, making it near impossible for the Uchiha to use it. There were also Anbu guards stationed outside the door and outside the window on Tsunade's orders. Uchiha Sasuke couldn't do anything other but stare at the ceiling. A member of his team entered his hospital room with a large grin on his face. In response, Sasuke turned and glared. He glared at the person who stopped him from obtaining power, the power he needed to avenge his clan, to kill his brother, that person being none other than Uzumaki Naruto. Naruto sighed at the glare and looked at him. He had hoped that his teammate would come to his senses and realize what Orochimaru's true intentions were. Unfortunately, revenge makes you blind. Are you all right, Sasuke? How are you feeling? Naruto asked. What do you think? Sasuke growled. Well, I did say that I was going to break your arms and legs and drag you back to the village if I had to, Naruto joked. Sasuke struggled and thrashed on the bed, trying to get free from his bonds as he jerked forward. You think this is funny, Dobi? Do you? Look what you did to me. My chakra, the curse seal and my Sharingan are all sealed off and I'm strapped to this bed. Sasuke roared. I told you that I wasn't gonna let you go to Orochimaru, answered Naruto. I'm trying to protect you from him and I was trying to save you from yourself. Do you really think that he would have given you the power to kill your brother without a price? Think about it, Tem. If I wasn't strapped to this bed I'd kill you right now, Sasuke sneered. What? Asked a surprised Naruto. I'll kill you. If I ever see you again, dope, I'll kill you, snarled Sasuke. Damn it, Sasuke, I'm trying to help you. Naruto shouted. I don't need your help. I don't need Konoha. I don't need anything except the power to kill my brother. That's all I care about. You dare to lecture me? I'm an Avenger and you will always be Adobe. Sasuke spat venomously. You'll never understand how I feel. You were born with nothing. No parents, no family, no clan. I had all that and then it was taken away from me by the person I admired most in the world, the person I wanted to be like and surpass more than anything, my own brother. So don't you dare think you can understand me, or how I feel, because you'll never be able to even comprehend what it's like to have everything you cherish ripped away from you. Because you dope, never had anything to begin with, I don't want you, or anyone else's help. Now get out of my sight. Sasuke roared. Naruto just sighed and left the room. The next day, Naruto stood at Team 7's meeting spot waiting for Sakura. Soon enough she came into view. Thinking that she was going to thank him for bringing Sasuke back, he put on his trademark grin and walked to greet her. Hey Sakura, was as far as he got before she lashed out at him with a left hook, straight to the side of his face. His head reeled back as an expression of shock contorted his features. A shaking hand reached to hold his stinging cheek. How could you do that to Sasuke-kun? She screeched. I asked you to bring him back and what do? You almost kill him, she yelled, breathing heavily, glaring daggers into his eyes. It's a miracle that he's still able to recover for active duty after what you did. I thought you were his friend. Sakura proceeded to punch and kick him for 10 minutes before her rage ran its course. Naruto, being Naruto, sat there and took it. never once raising his fists to defend himself or strike back. Sakura looked down on him and spat at him. I hate you, Uzumaki Naruto. You're nothing but a monster. I don't ever want to see you again. She turned and stomped away. If she'd stayed any longer, she would have heard his heart breaking and seen the tears fall from his eyes. A few hours later in Konoha council room, Naruto had been summoned to the council chambers. You wished to speak to me, Naruto said in a dead, miserable tone. This caught several people in the council off guard, especially Tsunade. This was not like the usual loud, hyperactive young ninja, who always wore a smile no matter what happened. What's wrong with Naruto? He's not himself. Something must have happened. I'll have to ask when we're done here, thought Tsunade. Elder Council member Mitokado Homura answered Naruto. Yes, we summoned you here, he said. The council has finished reading the reports that were given to us by you and your teammates, the Suna team, as well as Rock Lee and your sensei, Hitaki Kakashi's report. Although we're pleased that a mission of this level was successfully completed by a freshly ordained Chunin and a team of 4 genin, we have some concerns regarding the reports on the battle between you and your teammate Uchiha Sasuke. He continued, peering at Naruto over the rim of his glasses. What concerns? Asked Naruto, where a sick, cold feeling wormed its way into his gut. What has us concerned is the fact that you used a large amount of the Kyuubi's chakra in your battle, and caused a great deal of destruction to the Valley of the End, replied Elder Council member Udatane Kaharu. I had no choice. Sasuke was using the power of the curse seal, and in order to hold him back, and subdue him, I needed to access the Kyuubi's chakra. Plus, I was only trying to capture him while he was trying to kill me, which, I can prove right now. Naruto lifted up his shirt and showed the council the scars from the 2 Chidori, 1,000 birds, that Sasuke had rammed through his chest, one being very close to his heart. Several of the assembled clan heads, namely Akamichi Choza, Nara Shikaku and Inuzuka Sume, could not help but feel for the boys since all their sons had been on that team. One of them had been critically wounded, like Naruto, and many others were severely hurt. While that is acceptable, Uzumaki, we still have our concerns, namely the words of your own report, specifically when you were calling on the Kyuubi's chakra, you stated that you were feeling a great deal of anger and rage. You also mentioned that the Kyuubi's chakra served to intensify your anger, which, according to the reports, led to Uchiha Sasuke's current condition, said the old one-eyed elder Danzo Shimura. We're aware that this isn't the first time you were on the verge of losing control of yourself when using the Kyuubi's chakra. The reports from Team 7's mission to Nami no Kuni, Wave Country, mentioned your struggles against a Hyoten, ice release user, partner of a rank-missing ninja Momochi Zabuza, in which as stated by your sensei Hitaki Kakashi you released a large amount of the Kyuubi's chakra and nearly lost control. However, you managed to regain control in the end before you could do any harm to your teammates and your sensei. This time, however, you were unable to stop yourself before severely injuring Uchiha Sasuke, which is the reason for this meeting. Danzo finished, studying the young blonde intently with his eye. Now hold on just a minute. Tsunade broke in, slamming her fists on the table. You're not going to try and pin any of the trouble that has been caused by the Uchiha on Naruto. He may have used the Kyuubi's chakra but he clearly has it under control, as he demonstrated in Chunin exams, where he defeated Hyuga Neji without causing him any undue harm. His apprenticeship to my teammate Jiraiya should be more than enough to abate any fears or concerns, shouted Tsunade. With all due respect, Jiraiya's training with the container has not given us the desired results. Clearly the boy's emotions are linked to his ability to call upon the demon's power, and since he is unable to control his emotions, he cannot control a powerful enough amount of demonic chakra without losing control of his actions. The Uchiha's injuries are proof enough to attest to this. Consider this, Danzo said, the container has repeatedly mentioned that he sees Sasuke as his closest friend. If, in his lack of control, he damaged his friend this much, What does that say about the damage he could deal to a Konoha shinobi with whom he has no connection, should he once again lose control? I've to say this would not have happened if Sarutobi had not disbanded my root division or if he'd given me the chance to raise and train the boy properly, he finished. If Sensei had allowed that, Naruto would have been nothing more than your personal puppet. Tsunade snarled. I wanted nothing more than to train the container to become the perfect weapon for Konoha, and despite what you think of me, I always have the best interest of Konoha at heart, stated Danzo calmly. More like your own interests, if you ask me. Tsume growled out. She had never liked the old war hawk. He treated shinobi like disposable tools and wouldn't hesitate to send anyone on a suicide mission or abandon them if it suited his own needs. It was a fact that disgusted Tsume since her clan valued comradeship above all else. Danzo narrowed his eye at Tsume, but said nothing. Tsunade, we must also consider the threat of the organization that Jiraiya reported to us, the Akatsuki, which is made up of 9S class missing nins. One of the members being Uchiha Itachi, and a former member being your former teammate Orochimaru, Koharu stated, watching Tsunade. We are at a great disadvantage against them. We've little to no information with regards to their goals, besides the fact that they are after the Biju, not to mention our own current state of weakness from the invasion of Suna and Oto. They can easily attack us again to obtain the Kyuubi container, just as they attempted last time with Uchiha Itachi and Hoshigaki Kisame when they infiltrated the village. But this time all 9 members may attack the village, and we would most likely be destroyed in the resulting battle. That is why I believe we should eliminate that threat to the village right here, and now, said Koharu, eyeing Naruto as she concluded her speech. Naruto suddenly had a terrible feeling wash over him. They meant him. And you propose to do this, how? Drawled Shikaku, not liking the direction things were going. Simple. As I said, the Akatsuki want the Biju and they'll stop at nothing until they've obtained them all. Therefore, as long as we have the Kyuubi, we are in danger. What I suggest is we banish the container so that Konoha itself will no longer be a target, Koharu responded. No, I will not allow this. I will not allow you to banish one of our most loyal shinobi simply because you're afraid to fight the Akatsuki. You can't do this. As Hokage, I forbid it. Roared Tsunade. When Naruto heard Koharu's plan, he felt like his heart was going to stop. He met her once or twice when he was younger, visiting the old man. While the man named Homura treated him nicely enough, the woman Koharu treated him like the plague. Her tolerance of his existence was just barely present, and he'd received many a glare from her, for his pranks, or his casual way of referring to the Sandame as Gigi. But when Tsunade started to shout that she would not allow them to banish him, hope started to rise in Naruto. He knew Tsunade as the Hokage would have final say and she would never banish him. But when a small evil smirk appeared on Koharu's wrinkled old face, that hope shattered. I'm afraid you're wrong, Tsunade. We can do this. You see, in the village charter recorded by your grandfather the Shadaime Hokage, it is stated that when there is a situation that threatens the safety of the village and the Hokage is unwilling, or incapable of dealing with it, then the village council may overrule the Hokage on the decisions on how to deal with the situation, so long as the majority of the council is in favor of it, said Koharu, still maintaining her smirk. What? Tsunade roared in disbelief. Wait, even if we banish the boy, all we're doing is handing him to the Akatsuki. This plan, if it can be called that, will not eliminate the threat that the Akatsuki poses. All this will do, give them more power and further aid their goals, making them an even bigger threat than they are now. I also disagree, both fundamentally and professionally, with your blasé treatment of Naruto. To just throw a young ninja of our village to the wolves in this manner, in spite of all that he has accomplished, is an insult and is against everything Konoha stands for, declared Shuza, in righteous anger. Tsunade and Naruto both smiled, glad that they had some support, and happy that at least someone else could see reason. That is no boy, he is a demon, plain and simple, shouted out Ashikaga Shin, head of the merchant guild in Konoha. He had lost his only daughter, a young kunoichi, his pride and joy, on the night of the Kyuubi attack and held a great deal of hatred for Naruto. Shin's bias against Naruto prompted him to have Naruto banned from the majority of shops and restaurants that served the village, or in lieu of outright banning him, the merchants only gave him the worst things they had and even overcharged him for them. The only businesses that weren't like this were Ichiraku Ramen and Mikumo Ninja Gears and Weapons Store. Additionally, Mikumo Tensions, the owner of Mikumo Ninja Gear and Weapons Store, reputation as the finest weapons maker in the village, made him untouchable regardless of his membership in the Merchants Guild. Also, the most he could do to Ichiraku Tsuki was to not allow him to have a site or section to build a ramen restaurant in the village, which didn't hurt the man much. Plus, although Ashikaga Shin would never say it to anyone, he was actually intimated by the old ramen chief, ever since an incident when he had spoken badly about the Kyuubi brat in front of him. He had received a broken jaw for his troubles. You lot are all fools. If we listen to you, then we'll be giving the most powerful and destructive force that we know to a bunch of criminals, and I don't think what those criminals have in plan for the Bijus will be for the benefit of Konoha or any other village and country in the bloody elemental continent. Said Ino's father Inoichi. Do not worry about handing over the power of the Kyuubi to the Akatsuki Yamanaka-san. Both Danzo and I have taken into consideration that the container would very much likely be captured by them, which is why we've a plan that'll activate once we banish the container, and eliminate the threat of the Akatsuki at the same time, said Kaharu. And what exactly is this great plan of yours that will eliminate 9S class criminals in one go? Tsunade snarled out. I'm sorry Tsunade, but considering how sensitive this plan is and how vital it is to the village's security, we cannot tell you now. And due to your relationship with the container, we'll inform you and the rest of the council once we feel the time is right, said Danzo with a barely seen smirk. All Tsunade could do was growl and glare at the old war hawk, seething with suppressed rage and an overwhelming urge to rob Danzo of his remaining eye and limbs. I now propose that we cast a vote to decide the container's fate, stated Kaharu. Ashikaga Shin, I vote yes. Let's get rid of the demon. Inuzuka Sum, I vote no. The boy shouldn't be treated like this. As the Hokage has said, he is a loyal shinobi to this village and doesn't deserve to be banished. I've known him since he was a young pup and he often played with my own son when they were younger. Hojo Akira, a civilian politician who went wherever the civilian people went as long as it kept him in his comfortable position, I vote yes. This village will be much better off without him causing us trouble. Nara Shikaku, not only is this meeting troublesome, but it is also stupid. This vote is stupid. You guys, who are for banishing him, are stupid. So I vote no. Akamichi Shuza, like Sum's son Kiba, my son Choji has known Naruto since childhood. He was even one of Choji's first friends. And if I vote yes, I will never be able to face my son. Plus, he is the only person that can eat more ramen than me or Choji. My vote is no, Shuza said with a slight chuckle. Yamanaka Inoichi, quite frankly, I'm against this entire thing. I've seen what that boy goes through in the village from his memories in his mind, when I did his mental stability test. To be perfectly honest, if he does decide to destroy this village, then we deserve every bit of what we get. Contrary to your belief, his mind is a hell of a lot more stable and more controlled than that Uchiha. I vote no. You detain Kaharu. You all know my reasons, so I need not say them. I vote yes. Danzo, my reasons are the same as Kaharu-san. I vote yes. Sarutobi Asuma, I often saw the kid with my old man and I know he considered him a grandson in all but blood. If he saw this right now, he would be disgusted. I bet he's even turning over his grave right now. Also, the boy is good friends with my nephew and he will never forgive me if I was for Naruto's banishment. Plus he is also friends with your grandchildren, Kaharu and Homura. So I vote no. Asai Haida, one of the wealthiest men in Konoha who had lost a great deal of his wealth when his family home and been destroyed by the Kyuubi financial, I vote yes, and I'll be more than happy to kick it out myself. Aburame Shibi, although some of the things that Kaharu-san has said are logically sound, it would be illogical to simply banish the boy and indirectly hand him over to the Akatsuki without knowing what the plan is. And might I mention, we of the Aburame clan also know what it is like to be judged simply because of what we carry inside us. So I vote no. Kurama Unkai. Although I'm sympathetic to the boy's situation and hold no hatred for what he carries inside him, since he cannot be held responsible for being unable to control the demon inside his body, much like my niece Yakumo, it still does not change the fact that he is still a danger to our village. I vote yes. Senju Tsunade, Hokage, I vote no. I will not allow you to banish this boy just because of your idiotic hate. Mitokado Homura. Although I hold no hatred for young Naruto, some of the things that Danzo and Kaharu have mentioned cannot be ignored, and as much as it pains me to say this, I must vote yes. When Homura sat down, he looked at the young boy who stared back at him with hurt and betrayal on his face, filling Homura with guilt. I'm sorry, Naruto. I am merely doing what I think is best for the village. Although something tells me I am making a great mistake. Udon will probably never forgive me for banishing Naruto, Homura thought sadly. Anbu Commander, there is truth in what Danzo-san and Kaharu-san said with regards Akatsuki coming back to Konoha to capture Uzumaki Naruto. However, like Aburame-san, I cannot agree with banishing him and leaving him helpless against the Akatsuki, not without any knowledge of the plan to deal with them. This boy has proven himself to the village enough times and more, even in the exams, he helped save the village by defeating the Jinchuriki Gaara. I vote no. Amako Taichi was a wealthy businessman that had earned a great deal of wealth from selling various foods and herbs in and out of Konoha and the Fire Country. He lost crops, herbs, land and wealth during the Kyuubi attack. He also lost his elder brother who had been a jonin at the time. I vote yes. The sooner we get rid of him the better. Naruto had been counting the votes and it was tie, 8 for banishment, 8 against it. Now, there was only one person left to vote, Hyuga Hiashi, Hinata's father and head of the Hyuga clan. For the next few minutes Hiashi remained silent as he mulled over his decision, all the while though, Naruto waited breathlessly for Hiashi to decide his fate, since his vote would be the breaker. Hyuga Hiashi, I vote yes to banishing Uzumaki Naruto from Konoha. At this Naruto hit the ground and slumped over. His world had been shattered, everything was gone now. He would never be an accomplished ninja, never be Hokage, and never see his friends again. Tsunade had tears in her eyes but she would not cry. She wouldn't give these bastards the satisfaction of seeing her break. But she wasn't the only person who was angered and saddened by this. Most of those who were against his banishment were angry as well. Sume, livid, was glaring furiously at Hiashi while her partner Kuromaru growled at the man. Hiashi, for the most part, ignored Sume and her dog. Although I hold no hatred for the boy, I do think it is better that he leave. In our current condition, the village can't afford to have an enemy like the Akatsuki. With him gone, we can rebuild the village and our forces and deal with the Akatsuki when we're ready. Perhaps with him gone, Hinata will finally give up her silly little crush over the boy and start training more and become stronger like a true Hyuga heiress should be. If not, I've no choice but to put her in the branch clan and have Hanabi be the new heiress, thought Hiashi. The Anbu commander and Aburame Shibi just sadly shook their heads, knowing that this was a mistake that will one day come back to bite them. Shuza just sighed sadly, knowing his son would be greatly affected by this. Shikaku just thought, troublesome idiots. The civilian members of the council were laughing away at how they finally got rid of the demon brat. Danzo, Kaharu and Unkai did not join the fools and just kept their face neutral. Homura and Inoichi just lowered their heads sadly since they knew this was wrong. Asuma just sighed and looked out the window. He saw that it was raining again, like the funeral for his father and the other ninjas who died during the invasion by Suna and Oto. It seems that once again the heavens are weeping. This time it's weeping at the foolishness of this village, or maybe it is you, father, and Minato, who are weeping from the heavens at what we've allowed happen, thought Asuma. Anbu, take the Kyuubi container to have his chakra sealed. And have Danzo's new cursed seal placed on him so that he can't tell anyone our secrets or techniques. Ordered Kaharu. At this, the Anbu who appeared next to Naruto disappeared with him. 2 days later in Naruto's apartment. It was nighttime in Konoha. Naruto had just finishing packing up his few meager belongings so he would be ready to leave tomorrow. His throat still hurt from the seal that was put on him to prevent him from talking about Konoha to people outside the village. His friends had just left his apartment an hour ago to say goodbye, along with a few others. Thankfully Tsunade had been able to forbid anyone in the council from mentioning that he was banished to the civilians and most of the ninja population until he had left. She didn't want people lining up to throw things at him and jeer as he left. The only reason why his friends knew what was happening was because Tsunade had allowed the parents of Naruto's friends to tell them so that they could say goodbye. Guy and Lee had been shouting out about the unyouthfulness of the Konoha Council, swearing that they were now going to work twice as hard, so that their own flames of youth would not be dampened. Lee had made Naruto his eternal rival and vowed on his flames of youth, that he would one day help to bring Naruto back to Konoha, and if not he would run all the way to Suna and back again 100 times. Naruto could not help but laugh at Lee's vow. He was grateful to have a friend like him. Though Lee may have been weird guy, he was a loyal to a fault and he knew he could count on when he needed him. He and Lee were a lot alike. Both were orphans, both were weird in their own way, both never gave up no matter how hard it got for them, both were dead lasts in their class and both had a dream they wanted to achieve. Lee, I want you to do me a favor, Naruto began. Anything for you Naruto-kun, exclaimed Lee. I want you to promise me that you'll accomplish your dream, and prove that the dead last can become a great ninja, no matter what. Naruto proclaimed. Yosh, your flames of youth still shine brightly. Lee cried, and I will become a great ninja. It's a promise of a lifetime. Afterwards Neji came and gave his condolences over what had happened. He even said that all the respect he had gained for his uncle recently was now gone. He wished Naruto luck, and also told Naruto that Hinata had been forbidden to say goodbye to Naruto by her father. Naruto of course understood and could not help but feel sympathetic for Hinata, for being cursed with a cold-hearted bastard like Hiashi as her father. Tenten came as well, and told him how enraged she and her parents were when they heard that Naruto was being banished for some unknown reason. Naruto had been going to her family store for years, since her parents, unlike most people of Konoha, treated Naruto like a person. They even gave him discounts for weapons and gear when he was short of money, which was quite often. Tenten also gave Naruto a set of silver kunai as a parting gift, and said that they would miss him very much, leaving Naruto truly touched by Tenten and her parents' kindness. Kurenai also came to give Naruto her sympathy and a bento box from Hinata that she made herself. Naruto thanked Kurenai and told her to thank Hinata for him. When Kiba arrived with the others he began to rant and rave about the stupidity of the council. He even told Naruto that his mom still hadn't stopped swearing, which made Naruto laugh. Shino gave his condolences over the banishment. Naruto noted that every time someone mentioned Konoha's council, Shino's left eyebrow started to twitch in annoyance. Shikamaru, Asuma and Choji also arrived together along with Konohamaru, Moegi and Udon to say goodbye. Konohamaru was fairly torn up over Naruto's banishment. Naruto gave him his leaf headband saying that he can have it as a keepsake from him. Konohamaru tearfully took it and promised to keep it safe. Naruto also told him to make sure to wear it when he becomes Hokage, so that in some small way they both become Hokage. Konohamaru also promised that he would prank the hell out of Konoha for this, especially the ones who had Naruto banished from the village. Naruto just chuckled and said, "Give them hell Konohamaru." Konohamaru also vowed that when he was Hokage, he will disband the council and bring him back to Konoha, which made Naruto laugh again and tell him he better hurry up and become Hokage then. Both Udon and Moegi tearfully hugged Naruto saying that they were sorry for their grandparents' stupidity. Naruto just smiled and said that they had nothing to be sorry about. Shikamaru wished Naruto luck and told him to try to not get into too many troublesome situations. Naruto only smirked at him and said he would do his best. Choji gave Naruto a pie from his mom. Naruto thanked Choji and told him to thank his mom for him. Naruto had met Choji's mother once or twice and found her to be a very kind woman. Not to mention she was an excellent cook from the 1 or 2 meals he had with the family along with Kiba and Shikamaru. Asuma expressed his sorrow that he couldn't prevent the council from banishing him. Naruto thanked Asuma and told him he was grateful for his help even if he didn't succeed. Tsuki and Ayame both arrived incensed. Tsuki swore that if he ever saw that bastard Ashikaga Shin again he would do more than break his jaw. Ayame gave Naruto a kiss on the head, much to his embarrassment, and told him to take care of himself. They also gave him a few instant ramen cups and gave him a large, hot bowl of ramen as his last meal in the village. When Iruka arrived a few minutes after the others, saying he had been pissed would have been the understatement of the century. He was beyond furious belief and began ranting on about the idiocy of the council. He was tempted to go to the next council meeting and give them a piece of his mind. It was funny to imagine Iruka using his scary big head jutsu on the council members. Iruka told Naruto that he would miss him, and told him to take care of himself, and gave Naruto a fatherly hug. The only ones that had not come to say goodbye to Naruto were Ino, Sakura, Sasuke and Kakashi. Asuma told him that Ino had gone off to take care of the poor hurt Uchiha. Everyone already knew Sakura was with Sasuke, was still being detained in the hospital, and Kakashi, according to Kurenai, was heading towards the hospital to visit his prized student. Naruto wasn't shocked at their behavior, and found that he didn't even care. When asked why, Naruto simply told everyone what had happened with him and Sakura at the bridge and how Kakashi had trained him in only tree walking and teamwork exercises, while he had seen Kakashi teach Sasuke several flame jutsu, not to mention his Chidori. He taught Sakura to detect and dispel and cast genjutsus. Naruto also showed them the scars that Sasuke's Chidori gave him. It was a miracle that Naruto was still alive. Asuma and Kurenai were of course disgusted at Kakashi's blatant favoritism and their respect for the copycat ninja plummeted. Guy couldn't even explain how ashamed he was of his rival. When everyone was gone, Naruto gazed out the window. He knew the Anbu were there, watching him. He was not able to see or sense them, but he knew they were there. As he gazed he could not help but think about his life in Konoha. He had a few good memories, but honestly, all the others were bad. It was then Naruto realized he needed to know something, and if he was going to leave Konoha tomorrow forever then he might as well find out tonight. He was going to find out about his parents. It had been something Naruto had wanted to know all his life. When he asked the Sandaime, the old man told him he had no idea. However, Naruto just knew that the old man was lying. He had also asked Tsunade and Jiraiya, but they said they didn't know either. Again, he knew they were lying to him. The pervert may have been a convincing liar, but Tsunade was as good at lying as she was at gambling, and if she knew who his parents were, then so did the pervert. Naruto took out his life-size paper match doll of himself, one he had made several years ago when he was younger so that if anyone tried to sneak into his apartment when he was sleeping, to attack him, he would replace himself with it and snuck out a secret hatch that he had made under his bed so that he could make a quick escape from apartment without anyone noticing. After he was out, he stealthily headed for the Hokage Tower. They might have sealed up his chakra but he was still an expert at infiltration and stealth. After all, how else does a kid wearing bright orange sneak into the Hokage's tower and steal a scroll of forbidden jutsu? 2 hours later in the Hokage Tower. For the past hour Naruto had been looking through the Hokage office searching for information about his parents. He had finally found a hidden compartment in the Hokage's desk. Naruto then spent the next half hour trying to pick the combination lock on the drawer. Eventually he cracked the code, the date Konoha was founded. In the compartment were several scrolls and documents. When Naruto finished reading the document concerning his parents, he was so pissed he literally had to bite down on his tongue to keep himself from screaming in rage. They lied to me. Ero Sennin, Ba-chan and the old man, they all lied, right to my face. I'm the son of the Yondaime Hokage and they lied to me and stopped me from getting what was rightfully mine. Naruto furiously thought. He had seen the bank accounts in the documents. They showed that his family was among the 3 wealthiest families in Konoha, wealthier than those bastards Asai and Amako combined. Not counting the money that he got from his mother who was the heiress of the Uzumaki clan of Uzushiogakure, hidden among the whirling tides, which had collapsed right after the Second Great Shinobi War. The 2 family fortunes combined made him on equal standing in wealth with Gato, had he been still alive, making Naruto one of the wealthiest people in the whole goddamn elemental continent. Naruto was absolutely livid. He had to scrimp and save every day of his life with the little amount of social welfare from the village, and all this time he had a fortune that was rightfully his. The village kept his inheritance from him. They even had the audacity to deny him the knowledge of his family name. And to add insult to injury, they dumped him in some crappy apartment when he had a large estate behind the village. But the things that pissed him off most were 1. His own father had been the one to put the Kyuubi into him and give him a miserable life. And 2. That damn pervert Jiraiya was his godfather and was supposed to take care of him or at the least look out for him, which he didn't. Naruto then decided to open a scroll where he found a letter from his father the Yondaime. And from the way it was written with messy handwriting you could tell, this letter was written quickly, right before he sealed the Kyuubi into him. Dear Naruto, if you are reading this, then Sarutobi has deemed you ready to know the truth. You are my son, the son of the Yondaime Hokage. As I write this letter, the battle against the Kyuubi is raging on so I don't have much time to write. I know I will not return alive from this fight. Your mother's name was Uzumaki Namikaze Kushina, my wife who sadly died giving birth to you, due to a complication that happened. Know that both your mother and I loved you from the moment you came into this world and my only regret is that your mother and I will not be there to watch you grow up. Both of us leave you everything we own in this world. You also must know by now that I sealed the Kyuubi into you. Hopefully the village will have listened to my last wish and treated you as the hero that you are and that you've had a good life so far. But if my worst fear has come true and the villagers did not follow my wishes, and treated you like an outcast, then I'm truly sorry my son for any pain that you went through. I hope you can understand that I picked you to be the container of the Kyuubi for I could not go to another family and ask them to make such a sacrifice. The other reason why I made you the container of the Kyuubi was in the hope that you would use the power of the Kyuubi to become the guardian protector of the village, maybe even come to love it as much as I did, and also protect it from forces like the Uchiha Madara, one of the founders of Konoha. He is the one who fought against the Shadaime Hokage long ago and had the power to summon and control the Kyuubi. He is the one who summoned Kyuubi here to Konoha. My time is now up. Know that if you hate me for what I did to you my son, I do not blame you. But know that I do love you and will never stop loving you. I wish you a long and happy life. Sincerely, your father, Namikaze Minato. Well father, it seems that the village let you down. They treated me worse than any outcast. They treated me like the plague and I had to pay the price for your idealism and inability to face reality. Naruto muttered angrily. He placed his father's letter down and opened up the other scroll. There was another letter from his mother. After he finished reading the letter he had small tears falling from his eyes. I swear mother I will not let you down, I will make you proud and I will restore our family's legacy. Naruto swore. Naruto quickly resealed the letters in the scrolls and everything back in the compartment, since these were just copies, according to his mother's letter. The originals were at his family estate, not to mention several other important scrolls his mother had told him about. 20 minutes later at the Namikaze estate. When Naruto arrived at the estate he could not believe that he owned this place. It was an enormous mansion 4 stories high with wide open gardens, and it looked like it could easily house up to 200 people. I own all this and yet Konoha places me in a one-roomed run-down, cockroach-infested shithole. Naruto thought bitterly. Naruto quickly cut his finger kunai and spread his blood on the seal of the gate to open it. When the gate opened, he walked into the courtyard and entered the estate. He came to a huge hallway and swiftly searched for the library and the desk his mother mentioned. He soon found a locked door with another seal on it. After spreading more blood, he found a massive room filled with scrolls of different things, but he did not spend long looking at them. He promptly went to the desk and opened up one of the drawers, where he then spread more blood on a seal and a secret compartment revealed itself. He found the 8 scrolls mentioned in the letter. After retrieving the scrolls, Naruto decided to take at least a few more scrolls that may be useful to him later on. He took several on taijutsu, a few on kenjutsu and sealing, since he figured if he was unable to use chakra, he should probably find another way to defend himself. After grabbing the scrolls, Naruto resealed the library door and resealed the main gate, so no one can access the estate until he returned, and he vowed he would reclaim what is rightfully his no matter what. Back at Naruto's apartment, it did not take long for Naruto to sneak back into his apartment. He decided to leave now instead of giving those bastards in the council the pleasure of throwing him out themselves. He grabbed his backpack as well as a few other things, but before he went through the hatch door, he wrote a quick message on a piece of paper and left it on his kitchen table for anyone to find it. Had Naruto stayed 2 minutes longer, he would have met a late-night visitor. In the Hyuga compound 40 minutes ago. Currently the young Hyuga heiress Hyuga Hinata was crying her heart out over what happened. In the past 3 days she learned that her crush Naruto had been banished by the council because they believed him to be a threat for some unknown reason. And the worst thing was that her own father had been the deciding vote to send Naruto off. When her father told her this, she couldn't believe it. The only explanation he gave her was, Naruto is a threat to the village's safety and she will soon learn the truth. He also stated that it would be best to forget about him and focus on her Juken and becoming clan head, lest she wished to become a branch member. To be honest, Hinata didn't care about being clan head or becoming a branch member. All she wanted was for Naruto to be allowed to stay in the village. It hurt her even more that her father forbade her from saying goodbye. Earlier she had asked Kurenai-sensei to give him the bento she made for him. When Hinata's sobs dissolved, she looked outside into the night sky. She knew what to do. No more crying. I have to be strong. If this village is going to force Naruto-kun out, I'm not going to let him go until I tell him how I feel about him. This is maybe the last chance I have, thought Hinata. Silently, Hinata sneaked out of the compound and headed towards Naruto's apartment. Naruto's apartment. When Hinata arrived, she knocked on the door and waited for a few minutes. When she received no answer, she knocked several times more. When she still got no answer, she activated her Byakugan to see if he was in. When she saw Naruto sleeping in his bed, she was about to deactivate her Byakugan and knock again, but then she realized that the Naruto in bed had no chakra pathways. She frantically broke down the door, fearing the worst. When she reached Naruto in bed, she found it was just a doll made out of paper match. Hinata started to look around for any trace of him and found the note that Naruto left. When she read it, she collapsed to the ground and started to cry again. Sake all night. Sake bar 20 minutes earlier. Sitting by herself in the corner of the sake bar was Tsunade, surrounded by at least 15 empty sake bottles. She had been here for at least 5 hours drinking her sorrow away over the banishment of her surrogate little brother. Bartender, another bottle of sake, slurred Tsunade. The bartender was about to get her another bottle when someone else spoke up. No, she's had enough, so don't bother, said the person. When Tsunade turned to see who had kept her from having another drink, she frowned. What do you want now, Shizune? Can't you let me drown out my sorrows? Cried Tsunade. No, we've been through this with Uncle Dan and your brother for far too long. I won't let you start again with Naruto, answered Shizune. She then went over to Tsunade and lifted her out of the chair. She carried her out to the night and started walking down the street. As they walked, Shizune said, "Come on, a bit of walking in the night air will clear your head a bit so that you can see how selfish you're being." "What the do you mean by that?" Tsunade irritated at her apprentice. At this, Shizune then did the unimaginable. She slapped Tsunade across the face with all the strength she could muster. The loud smacking sound that could be clearly heard in the empty street. When Tsunade turned her head back to face Shizune, she put her hand to her reddened cheek. A look of complete shock covered her face. She never expected Shizune to do something like this. Before Tsunade could come to her senses, Shizune started to speak. "Look at you, leader of the strongest military power in the elemental nations, and you're here. Drinking your pain and feeling sorry for yourself. You did everything you could to put a stop to Naruto's banishment, and yet you have not even once gone see him. You know in the morning he will be leaving the village for good. Have you even thought about how Naruto might feel right now, after everything that he has gone through? He stayed, growing up in this village with all the abuse and hardship, just so that he could one day become a ninja and then accomplish his dream of becoming Hokage. All of which has now been stolen from him. He's being kicked out of the only home he's ever known, and once he leaves he will be hunted by the Akatsuki, who will not stop until they extract the Kyuubi from him and kill him. So stop being so selfish and start thinking about someone else for a change. Naruto right now is alone and is hurting, and he needs all the people he cares about around him to help him through this. Now are you going to go to him, or are you going back to that bar again and try and drink your problems away again?" Shizune ranted. Tsunade just stood there still holding her red cheek. She could not move after letting Shizune rant. After a minute or two she collapsed on the ground and started to cry. Shizune's words had finally sunken in and had hurt more than a punch in the gut or a kunai stab ever could. It just that I'm so tired of the village taking so many of the people I care about from me. First my grandfather, then my uncle, my BB brother, then Dan-kun, and then Sarutobi sensei, and now Naruto. Why does this village keep taking away the people I care most about?" Sobbed Tsunade. "I know it hard, Tsunade-sama, but drinking your problems away like this won't solve anything, nor will feeling sorry for yourself." Shizune helped her sensei up and said, "Now let's go to Naruto. I'm sure he could do with someone coming to talk to him and be with him right now." Tsunade just nodded her head in agreement, and once she was on her feet the two of them headed for Naruto's apartment. As they walked, Tsunade suddenly said, "Thanks Shizune, I needed someone to smack some sense into me." "Anytime Tsunade-sama. I did enjoy smacking you though," said Shizune with a smirk. "I bet you did after all the trouble I caused you over the years." "I'm glad that you are still with me," replied Tsunade with a small smile. "Always Tsunade-sama, always," said Shizune with her own smile. Naruto's apartment. When they reached the apartment they saw that the door had been broken and heard someone rushed in and turned on the lights, and saw Hinata on the floor next to the small kitchen table bawling her eyes out. They also saw the lifelike paper match Naruto on the floor next to Naruto's bed. Tsunade quickly went on her knees and went to the crying young girl. "Hinata, what's wrong? Where's Naruto?" asked a worried Tsunade. But Hinata just grabbed onto Tsunade's robe and put her head into her chest and cried harder. Tsunade tried to calm the girl until she noticed a crumpled piece of paper on the floor that Hinata must have been holding. When she picked it up and read it, Tsunade's own eyes started to tear up and she too started to cry, holding onto Hinata for her comfort. Shizune went over to the two weeping women and picked up the piece of paper that Tsunade had dropped. "Oh Naruto," she thought sadly about the poor boy that she viewed as a younger brother. She felt like crying with Hinata and Tsunade, but she knew she could do that later. Now was not the time. Suddenly the Anbu squad that had been assigned to watch over Naruto appeared. The squad had seen the young girl come to the Uzumaki apartment and knock on the apartment door. They knew that the young girl had feelings for the boy. All the different Anbu squads had seen the girl spy on Naruto at one point or other. It became a common joke about how the boy was so blind to the girl's feelings towards him and how the girl would faint whenever she tried to talk to him. Hell, some even had betting pool running, as to when she would finally pluck up the courage to tell him how she felt or if Naruto would ever notice. The Anbu division had been informed of Naruto's banishment due to it dealing with the village security, but had been sworn to not inform anyone until Naruto left the village. Like most of the Anbu division, the squad disagreed with the council's decision since they knew he wasn't the Kyuubi, and knew enough about sealing to understand the level of intricacy and skill that was involved in the Yondaime's seal. This same Anbu squad had kept watch on him long enough to know he was simply a young boy with a hard burden on his shoulders. When they saw the girl break into Naruto's apartment, they grew concerned, especially when they heard the girl crying a minute later. The squad had been about to go and see what had happened, but when they saw the Hokage and Shizune arrive, they waited. A minute or so after the Hokage and Shizune entered Naruto's apartment, they heard more crying, or to be more precise, the Hokage crying with Hinata. When they heard this, the squad decided to investigate. Shizune-san, what has happened? Why are the Hokage and Hinata-san crying, and where is Uzumaki-san? Asked the leader of the Anbu squad that wore a bear Anbu mask. Shizune answered, Naruto is gone. The Anbu captain could not mask the surprise in his voice, but how? My squad and I have been watching his apartment the entire time. We never saw him leave, we even checked on him an hour ago when we looked through his window and saw him asleep in his bed. You most likely saw that in his bed, answered Shizune, pointing at the life-size paper match Naruto on the floor. Plus, Naruto probably has a secret escape hatch or something in here, just in case, since I'm sure you all know how resourceful he can be, said Shizune. All four Anbu nodded in agreement. Do you wish for us to look for him and try and find him? Asked the Anbu captain. Why bother? Naruto is probably long gone by now. He is going to be banished tomorrow anyway. Why not let him get a head start? Even if you bring him back, the council is just going to make a spectacle of him tomorrow in front of the village, and I for one do not want to see that, said Shizune. The Anbu nodded, not wanting to see something like that either. You can all go now. Shizune ordered. The squad said, hi, and left. As they did, Shizune could not help but look up to the night sky, wondering where Naruto was right now. Please be safe, Naruto, Shizune thought. Then went over to the two weeping women and tried to comfort them. As she did so, she placed the note that Naruto had left back on the kitchen table. There was only one word written on it. Goodbye. Outside Konoha, on a hill overlooking the village, a lone figure stood looking down at it for the last time. My old life in Konoha is over, and a new one will begin outside it. But just you wait, Konoha. I vow, in the name of my mother Uzumaki Kushina, I'll become strong. I'll become stronger than my father or anyone else has ever been, and when I do, you'll be sorry that you ever banished me. That is a promise of a lifetime. Believe it. Thought Naruto before turned his back on the village, walk away into the night. Some time later. It had been a while since Naruto left Konoha. He had taken off in a random direction, not really caring where he was going. His had wanted to go to Suna, but that would cause problems for Gaara. He wasn't even sure if he would be welcome there, since he was one of the reasons why the invasion failed. Though Suna had been tricked into it, they still suffered a heavy loss and a humiliating defeat. Not to mention he would bring the Akatsuki to their doorsteps. Sure, Gaara was a Jinchuriki like him, but Gaara could at least defend himself and his village, as it was surrounded by sand. Naruto, on the other hand, couldn't use chakra and would only make things harder on Gaara. He didn't want to do that to his friend. He didn't want to go to Taki or to his friend Shibuki, the leader of Taki, and cause trouble for him, since like Suna, Taki's alliance with Konoha would be very important to them. Naruto had also thought about going to Haru, Yuki no Kuni, Spring, Snow Country, since he was sure that Lady Koyuki would welcome him, but he knew that Haruyuki no Kuni was very far away and he would definitely not get there by foot. Not only that, he didn't have enough money to get there by ship. He also knew that at some point the Akatsuki would find him there and would attack him, as a result putting Lady Koyuki and her people in danger. Wave might have been a good choice, or even the land of tea, working with the Wagarashi clan. But Naruto knew that eventually the Akatsuki would find him in either places and he would not put Wave in danger because of him. He also knew that the Wagarashi clan would stand no chance if they went up against anyone of the Akatsuki. All things linked up to the same thing. The Akatsuki would at some point find him and hunt him down, hurting the people he cared about in the process. He thought about going to another ninja village that had no alliance or real link or connection to Konoha that could maybe get these seals off him and maybe even protect him in some way if he agreed to be one of their ninjas. But he realized that even if he found a village that could help him and allow him to join, the choices weren't that great. Aim, Kusa and Hoshi were small villages and not very strong. He knew he needed to be with one of the 5 great shinobi villages to stand a chance of surviving an attack from the Akatsuki. Kiri was out of the question since he had heard when he met Haku that they were in the middle of a civil war. Plus after he heard how people with bloodlines were treated there, he wanted no part of that. Iwa was also out of the question since the moment they looked at him or found out where he was from or even worse found out who his parents were, he would be killed on the spot. The final choice was Kumo, but Naruto didn't want to go there, since he didn't know much about the village, other than what Neji had told him about how they attempted to kidnap Hinata. He also heard that Kumo tried to kidnap her again during the Suna and Oto invasion, which was prevented by Neji and his team. Needless to say, Naruto did not have a very high opinion of that village. This left him only one choice, to wander around on his own trying to find a way to get these seals off him himself and keep on training with the scrolls he had took from his family home. Naruto was in a dense forest in the middle of a heavy rainstorm trying to find some shelter. He was unsure of where exactly though. He had run out of food several days ago. He had tried hunting but had no luck. He didn't go to town, for fear of being spotted or recognized from any chance meetings with Akatsuki, or their agents. Soon enough though, Naruto collapsed on the wet ground, weak from tiredness and hunger. So this is how it's all going to end. Not the way I had wanted, but it could be worse. Naruto thought sadly as he was about to drift into unconsciousness. Until he forced himself to wake up. No. I still have my goal to accomplish. I can't give up. I won't give up, Naruto thought as he tried to get up but fell back on the ground. As he was drifting in and out of unconsciousness he heard the chiming of small bells. When he glanced up, he saw 2 figures strolling towards him. Even though it was dark he could make out 2 very important facts. Both of them were wearing conical straw hats with small spike-like balls hanging down to cover their faces and both were wearing dark cloaks, with chin-high collars that covered their faces. One word popped into his mind as he fell into unconsciousness. Akatsuki. They had found him. Last time on Raikage. As he was drifting in and out of unconsciousness he heard the chiming of small bells. As he looked up he could see 2 figures walking in the rain heading towards him as they got closer. Even though it was dark he could make out 2 things about the 2 people walking towards him. One, both were wearing conical straw hats with small spike-like balls hanging down to cover their faces. The other thing was, both were wearing dark cloaks, with chin-high collars that also covered their faces. One word popped into his mind as he drifted into unconsciousness. Akatsuki. They had found him. 10 years later. In the middle of the ocean. Currently in the middle of the sea that separated Cha no Kuni, tea country, from the islands of Nagi and Ouzu, a single royal ship belonging to the daimyo of Umi no Kuni, sea country, was sailing on its way to Tsuki no Kuni, moon country. On board the ship was the daimyo of Umi no Kuni, the only daughter Princess Saki. The princess was extremely beautiful although she did not wear expensive clothes, jewelry, or makeup like most princesses. Instead, she wore a simple, yet elegant purple kimono with red slash around her waist. She was slimly built and had long, silky raven black hair that reached down to her lower thigh, bright sky blue eyes, and had an angelic-like face. Her beauty had often won the attention of many different suitors from her own country as well as from others, but the princess had shown no interest with any of them. Another thing about the princess was that, unlike most princesses, she did not spend her time going to parties and looking nice just to attract suitable husbands. She preferred to spend her time learning. She enjoyed reading poetry, writing, singing songs, and reading books as well as playing with children. She wanted to learn as much as she could so if needed be, she would be able to help rule her country. She was passionate for the peace and prosperity of her country. Even though she was not the next ruler of Umi no Kuni, her older brother Tachihiko was, she wanted to at least contribute a bit. She did not like fighting and believed that force should only be an absolute last resort once all options for peace talks and communications have ended and there is no other choice. The princess was also a very skilled diplomat and had helped her father on several occasions during talks with other countries in terms of trade rights and other things. She was a very gifted speaker due to her passions to help people who needed it. The reason why the princess was heading to Tasuki no Kuni was because she was engaged to the crown prince of Tasuki no Kuni, Prince Tasuki Hikaru, heir to the throne of Tasuki no Kuni. Both the prince and the princess had met often over the years and had been friends for many of those years since both Tasuki no Kuni and Umi no Kuni were strong allies with one another. Hikaru's grandfather, the previous king of Tasuki no Kuni, his son Tasuki Kakeru, current king of Tasuki no Kuni, as well as Hikaru himself had often visited Umi no Kuni when Hikaru's grandfather had business with the Umi daimyo over ships, trade issues, or other political matters. Saki, Tachihiko, and their father, in turn, would accompany the delegations to Tasuki no Kuni often. They would also come and visit just for a vacation, since Tasuki no Kuni was famed for being an excellent country for people on holidays. Over time, both Saki and Hikaru had grown close with one another, often wrote letters to each other. It had been obvious that the two were falling in love. Whenever they were at the same parties, both could be usually found talking to one another or even dancing together. Eventually, Sachi's father told her and Hikaru that, at some point when the children were each 10 years old, Hikaru's grandfather, Tasuki Kakeru, suggested an arranged marriage between the two since he believed that Saki would be an excellent wife for his grandson and would help him rule wisely over the people of Tasuki no Kuni. Further, such a marriage would make the alliance between their two countries even stronger. Sachi's father had agreed to this so long as, when the two were of marrying age, they agreed to the conditions also. Hikaru's grandfather, Tasuki Kakeru, had agreed and both men signed a contract stating the agreement between the two rulers. When both the prince and princess saw the contracted between Sachi's father and Hikaru's grandfather, both agreed to the contract. The wedding was to be held in Tasuki no Kuni. Saki would have to be in Tasuki no Kuni 2 months before the wedding so that she could help prepare for the ceremony and prepare herself for the duties that she would take as the future queen of Tasuki no Kuni. Sachi's father, along with her brother Tachihiko, would come later on for the wedding itself to give her away. When she was leaving, Sachi's father had originally wanted her to have an entire fleet as well as 1,000 royal guards to protect her on her way to Tasuki no Kuni, but she had battered her father down to one ship, 20 royal guards, and a squad of ninjas to protect her since she did not want so many men around her all the time. Sachi's father had hired a squad of Konoha ninjas to guard her. Although Hikaru had offered to send some ninjas from the newly founded shinobi village Tasuki no Kuni, the Getsugakur no Sato, the village hidden under in the moon, or hire ninjas from other villages, such as Kumogakur no Sato, the village hidden in the clouds, or the newly formed Heavenly Alliance, whom Tasuki no Kuni had been allied with the past 2 years, they were politely refused. Sachi's father had insisted that he use the ninja from Konoha since he had held them in high regard ever since a ninja from that village had saved his life many years back. As the ship sailed, the princess could be seen on deck seated down on a small stool reading a book to pass the time. At times, She would also watch some of the ninjas from the Konoha team spar with one another to pass the time. As time passed, the princess could not help but think that the trip was becoming quite uneventful, believing nothing would happen. Oh, how wrong she was. On the bow of the ship, currently standing at the bow of the ship looking forward, was a tall, attractive raven-haired woman with bright crimson-red eyes. She wore a single red sleeve and white patterned bandages with a ninja fishnet shirt underneath it. This woman was none other than Yuahi Sarutobi Kurenai, Konoha's famed genjutsu mistress, and was the team leader of this mission, which was of vital importance to Konoha since the village had been on some hard times of late and was in growing danger from its enemies. The marriage between the princess of Umi no Kuni and the prince Tasuki no Kuni would strengthen the already strong trade alliance between Umi no Kuni and Tasuki no Kuni, and, if they successfully accomplish this mission, it would put Konoha in good favor with both countries. This would then allow Konoha to negotiate for a trade treaty with them, since the trade alliance between Umi no Kuni and Tasuki no Kuni controlled all trade in the southern part of the elemental sea. Author note: don't know if this is what the sea is called in Naruto, so I just calling it that. Also, if Konoha was able to get a trade treaty with them, it would give Konoha a new, much needed source of trade and missions. Not to mention it could lead to a possible alliance between the newly founded Tsukigakure no Sato and Tasuki no Kuni. As Konoha currently needed all the allies they could possibly get. As Kurenai looked out to the endless horizon of the sea, she could not help but think of all the things that happened in the past 10 years. So much had happened and so much had changed over this period of time, and it all started when the Konoha Council had banished a certain blonde ninja. When news of Naruto's leaving the village the night before he would be officially banished from the village, caused many on the civilian part of the council to cause a fuss. They had wanted to make a spectacle out of him in front of the whole village when he was officially banished. Although the other members that had voted for Naruto to be banished did not care, since, as long as he was gone, they did not care how he left. Soon after, the council then released the news that, now that Naruto was no longer a ninja or a citizen of Konoha, the law that the Sandaime Hokage made about Naruto was annulled. Now all the younger generations now knew that Naruto was a Jinchuriki for the Kyuubi. The news had received a mixed response among the younger generation. Many had followed their parents' path and viewed Naruto as the Kyuubi in human form. Others, who had at least known Naruto in some way, did not share the older generation's view of him and just saw him as a person who got a raw deal from the village. Others still did not know what to think of him, since they had seen the boy many times and, other than doing pranks, he had done nothing wrong, but yet he held the Kyuubi inside him, the demon that had nearly destroyed their village. The news, of course, had the biggest effect on the members of the former Konoha 12. After hearing the news, Shino had stated that he had found a new form of respect for Naruto considering the burden he held. Plus, he too knew what it was like to be the living host of another being. Neji himself had said that he respected Naruto even more now, for the burden that he carried was one heavier than the one he himself carried and, in some small way, understood what Naruto went through the burden to carry a cursed seal. When Lee had heard the news, he had started shouting about how bright Naruto's flames of youth were to carry and contain such a burden like the Kyuubi in him and still smile all the time. He had also stated that he would work even harder now just so that his own flames of youth could match Naruto's. As Kurenai thought of that, she could not help but chuckle at that memory of Lee, since he always was able to brighten people's mood much like Naruto used to do. When Hinata heard the truth about Naruto, she had cried harder than she ever had, only now knowing how much Naruto must have gone through in his life carrying his burden, and never once had she tried to help him. She had cried most of the day after Naruto left, since she had been the first one to find out that Naruto had left the village before she could say goodbye to him. She had also confessed in private to Kurenai that she had gone over to Naruto's apartment to tell him how she felt about him, only to find that he had left. When Hinata told Kurenai this, Kurenai felt her heart go out to the poor girl, as she could only imagine what the girl was going through at the time. Even with the news of Naruto being a Jinchuriki, the opinion of Naruto to most of the other members of the Konoha 12 did not change, they all considered him their friend. The same was said by Konohamaru and his friends. The only members of the Konoha 12 that had anything bad to say about Naruto were Ino, much to her father's disappointment, and Sakura. They had taken the view of believing that Naruto was a demon, while Sasuke boasted when he heard the news that he knew that the dope couldn't have beaten him without some help, and saying that if it wasn't for the Kyuubi's chakra Naruto would never have beaten him. To which Shikamaru had put him down a peg or two by telling him it still didn't change the fact that Naruto still defeated him, and it wasn't any different than when Sasuke had used the power of the curse seal that he got from Orochimaru. This, of course, shut up the boy for a while. When the news of Naruto's banishment had been released to the civilian and ninja population, there had been a great deal of celebration by the civilians and many ninja, mainly Chunin and a few Jonin-level ninja, but that had been quickly put down by Suand, having many of them arrested and put in holding cell for a few days for disturbing the peace. When the civilian council tried to object to Suand's actions trying to stop the celebration of Naruto banishment, Suand quickly put them down, stating that they were still under a state of emergency and that there were to be no celebration at any time until the state of emergency had ended. The civilian council could do nothing about this since Suand was well in her rights to do so during such times. Not long after the news of Naruto's banishment and being a Jinchuriki came out, Konoha fell under attack by a series of daily pranks at the hands of Konohamaru and his friends. These pranks lasted an entire year before Konohamaru and his team graduated from the academy. The pranks were often and always varied. The pranks ranged from having sticky flour bombs exploding in clothes stores, stink bombs exploding in food stores, and sticky bubblegum bombs exploding in the several different shops and on people. A large number of cockroaches were also let loose in a restaurant, and all the Inuzuka's kennels were opened and their dogs released. That is, after spraying several people with dog pheromone. Let's not forget the paint bombs exploding in certain people's homes. One of the worst pranks was when, at some point, the civilians tried to celebrate Naruto banishment. Konohamaru and his team built a catapult and used old dirty baby diapers from the baby's ward in the hospital as ammo. Needless to say, the celebrations did not last long and many people had to go home and scrub themselves down hard. Most of these pranks were aimed at the civilian population as well as others who had either been cruel to Naruto in some way or another. A lot of Konohamaru's pranks had also been aimed at the council members that had banished Naruto. Kurenai could not help but smile when she remembered all the pranks that Konohamaru and his team had done, some being with council member Kaharu, who had been legged by two Inuzuka dogs, one at each leg, and had to try and walk to the hospital as they were doing her. It had taken most of the day trying to get the dogs off her. Another prank was when Udon had somehow set off a stink bomb in the council room while it was in session. It had taken several days before the smell in the council room had cleared enough for it to be used again. Moegi achieved something special when she had switched Sakura's shampoo with instant, quick drying glue when she was in the Kunoichi shower room. The girl's hands were stuck to her head and, to further humiliate her, Moegi had tricked her into walking out to the street where she had to run all the way home in her birthday suit. In the end, Sakura's mother had to cut off several large bits of her hair to get her hands free, which resulted with Sakura having several bald parts on her head and her hands now had a light pink coating. Needless to say, Sakura had not been seen by anyone for a few weeks. Konohamaru and his team had even somehow gotten the Chunin Suzumo and Katetsu to help them in their pranks, where later on Kurani found out that they had been friends with Naruto and loved his pranks. With the two Chunin's help, they set up a bubblegum bomb in council member Hojo Akira's office. When he entered, it blew up, causing Akira to be stuck to his office wall. It wasn't until the next day that they were finally able to get him off the wall, but they had to shave his head bald since his hair was completely covered in bubblegum, not to mention he was covered in sore marks and scratches from the bubblegum being pulled off him. The next person to be hit had been Kakashi. Azumo and Kotetsu had told him of an excellent bar called the Blue Oyster that they had found in the village and that it served top-notch sake for cheap prices. When Kakashi went to it, he found out that it was gay bar and, what was worse, the night he went was when the Hitaki Kakashi fanboy club was having their annual meeting. Needless to say, Kakashi's girly screams were heard all over the village for the early part of the night. When they had finally caught him, the fanboy club had spent the rest of the night dancing the tango dance with Kakashi. They even had all taken turns to dance with the copycat ninja. To add insult to injury, Azumo and Kotetsu had somehow gotten photos of Kakashi's dances with each of the members of his fanboy club and made copies of them all and posted them all over the village for everyone to see. This even also got the attention of many yaoi fangirls. Needless to say, Kakashi found it very hard to walk down the street with certain men and women eyeing him in a way that freaked him out. Thinking of that time caused Kurenai to chuckle at Kakashi's suffering since, in her mind, he deserved it. Another council member that had been targeted was Ashikaga Shin. He had several skunks secretly placed inside his briefcase, and when he opened it, well, needless to say, no one was willing to do business with him or even to stay with him in the same room for a week or two. That is, everyone except for the ramen chief Tenchi, who, one day, saw Shin and punched him in the nose, breaking it along with giving him 2 matching black eyes. Ino was then later hit by pranksters where they secretly switched her bubble bath liquid with green dye so that when she looked at herself in the mirror the whole village heard her reaction. It had taken 3 weeks before the dye finally wore off her. The running joke during this time that many of the Konoha 12 members repeated was that she would at least match the gardens and flowers in her family store. Not only that, it would also improve her stealth skills in the forest. These jokes had infuriated the young girl to no end as they happened daily and often. Sasuke was yet another person to suffer from the unending pranks. The youngsters had slipped a sleeping pill in his food at some point and somehow, in a single night, painted Sasuke's entire house pink, both inside and out as well as the floor and roof. They had even filled the rooms with various women toys that would also be used by certain types of men as well as many frilly things. They even went so far as to dye his hair pink as he slept and threw out all his normal clothes and replaced them with tight-fitting shirts that said, "Gay Uchiha's rule, I love to men," or, "Kiss me, I'm gay." They also put in tight-fitting hot pants, and his underwear had been switched with pink frilly girly underwear with pictures of hearts and teddy bears. They even went so far as to put in some clothes that were pink versions of Lee jumpsuit. The next morning everyone heard the Uchiha's cries of rage and horror and had seen the young Uchiha walking around the streets wearing a pink shirt that said, "Gay Uchiha's rule," a pair of hot pants where people saw a bit of the frilly underwear with hearts sticking out, a bit of the hot pants as well as his new hair color as he walked around the village ordering new clothes and having his home refurbished, which altogether took several days. Also during that time, the young Uchiha heir had gained a great deal more attention from his fanboy club, much to his annoyance, where many were sending letters of proposals of marriage to him and undying love as well as several pictures of them in various outfits, much to the young Uchiha horror. The Kurama clan had their clan compound TP'd by the Konohamaru gang at one night where toilet roll could be found all over the place on every home in the compound. Council member Asai Haida was then hit later on by Konohamaru and his friends and their Chunin allies where they infested Haida's new family home with dozens of rats and mice and hundreds of cockroaches, termites, spiders and other various creepy crawlies. By the time Haida realized that his home had been infested by these creatures, they were all over his house. It cost Haida a fortune to get rid of all the insects and vermin, considering the fact that more had gotten in the mansion and their population was so large that it took months to get the job done. He had to wait even longer since the termites and the other vermin had done a lot of damage to the interlayer of the mansion, resulting in the mansion being condemned and then completely refurbished from top to bottom. He even had to buy all new furniture since the vermin had ruined it all. Altogether, the entire ordeal had cost Haida a very sizable amount of his money where, from what Kurenai had heard, he had cried like a baby when he found out how much money it would cost him. Haida was not the only one to suffer from a lose of a get deal of money. Because of Konoha pranksters, Konohamaru and the others had somehow gathered an army of over 1,000 hungry rabbits, to which to this day no one had figured out how they gathered all the rabbits, and let them loose on Amako Taichi's fields and crops. The rabbits practically ate all of Taichi's crops, costing him an entire year's worth of profits, and it had cost his a very pretty penny to get rid of all the rabbits and replant all the crops. Later on it was said that he had thrown quite a hissy fit over it all. The Hyuga clan was soon hit afterwards with probably the biggest prank ever played in Konoha. Somehow, Konohamaru had broken into the Hyuga compound and stolen all the Hyuga clan's underwear, from boxers and briefs to bras, knickers and thongs, and proceeded to hang them up all over the village, from trees to flag poles and from rooftops to the middle of the street. Kurenai did not think it was possible for any Hyuga, other than Hinata, to blush as much from embarrassment, but on that day she had been proven wrong when the entire Hyuga clan had to go around the whole village, picking up their unmentionables in front of everyone. Many of the Hyuga clan members had blushes on their faces that rivaled Hinata's as they picked up their various things. Hiyashi himself had to go up to the tallest flag post atop of the Hokage Tower to get his boxers down that were flying on the flag post like flags for all the village to see. As he did so, the Hyuga clan head's face was so red from embarrassment and rage that it put any color that Hinata had ever showed to shame. The only Hyugas that had not been hit by Konohamaru's prank were Neji, Hinata, and Hinata's younger sister Hanabi. Kurenai could not keep herself from laughing at the prank on the Hyuga clan that day. Since they had been made the laughing stock of the entire village, Asuma had even told her that during several council meetings Sume could not look at Hiyashi without busting out laughing, while the other clan heads snickered and laughed at the Hyuga clan. Even the stoic Shibi and the silent Anbu commander were heard chuckling at Hiyashi's humiliation. Kurani remembered when she and Asuma asked Konohamaru how he did it. The young boy had just smiled and said, "A true prankster never reveals his secrets." About a month after Naruto banishment, Uchiha Sasuke had his trial for trying to leave the village to join one of Konoha's mortal enemies, the snake Sannin Orochimaru. During the trial, the civilian council members hired the top litigators in Konoha to defend the Uchiha's case. They had stated that Sasuke's judgment was impaired when he left the village due to the fact of the mental trauma that he suffered when the Uchiha clan had been massacred, combined with the effect that the curse seal that Orochimaru put on him. Hence, Sasuke could not be held responsible for his actions at the time, since it had been proven that the curse seal can affect a person's mind or judgment at times. The example being Anko with her memory loss, and his teammate Haruno Sakura reports that Sasuke was not himself when he first used the curse seal when he had awakened from his battle with Orochimaru in the Forest of Death. Although some did argue that, if the Uchiha's mental state was in question, then he should no longer be a ninja, the litigators countered by stating that Jiraiya had sealed up the curse seal himself when Sasuke was returned to the village and there was no danger of Sasuke leaving. They also argued that Konoha could not afford to be seen weak now, since it had not been long after the invasion of Suna and Oto, and Konoha needed the Uchiha clan so they could still be seen as being strong. No one could really argue against that statement. Altogether, the trial had been a complete farce as far as many ninjas saw it, since it was clear that the civilians were on the Uchiha's side, and, if he had been properly punished like he should have been, the civilian would cause havoc over him and would riot over him, weakening Konoha further. It was soon decided that Sasuke would not be executed or sent to prison for trying to defect from the village, and he would be allowed to stay a ninja. However, he would not be allowed to be promoted for 3 years. He would also have a tracking seal put on him by Jiraiya once he returned to the village, and until said time, he would be under house arrest and would have Anbu watching him at all times until he had proven himself to be a loyal ninja. He was also not allowed to leave the village by himself under any condition, and, if he did have to leave, he would have to be accompanied by 1, 2 or 3 Jonin ninjas. Further, he was also forbidden from using the curse seal no matter what the situation, and if he did, he would be killed on the spot without trial. When the civilians' council members heard the last ruling, they tried to object, but Suand had shot them down. since Sasuke was a ninja of Konoha again and was under her ruling and he had to be punished for trying to leave the village no matter what his excuse was. The civilians' council members knew that they could not fight the last ruling since it was within her power to do so, plus Danzo, Kaharu, and Homura were all in agreement with Suand ruling, hence without their support the civilian members stood no chance of overruling her. Even with the punishment, many ninjas saw this as nothing but a slap on the wrist, and were angered by this, since they knew that they could not get away with what the Uchiha had done and yet he had. Although Sasuke himself may have found Tsunade ruling insulting to him and it may have angered him, it did not change the fact to many ninjas that he was getting off far too easily. About 3 months after Naruto's banishment, Jiraiya returned to the village planning to take Naruto on a training trip. At the time he had not known or heard of Naruto's banishment since he had left the village right before the council had banished Naruto. But when he did hear of it from Suand he went ballistic and had tried to attack the council members that had Naruto banished. It took Tsunade and over a dozen Anbu members to hold Jiraiya back from killing them. Soon after, they were able to calm Jiraiya down enough so that he would not try and kill the council members. After he had calmed down, Jiraiya had stated that he was going to find Naruto, but the council stopped him stating that they would not allow it. When Jiraiya told them they could not stop him since he was a ninja and answered only to the Hokage, Kaharu had countered by stating that if he went to Naruto he would interfere with their plan to deal with the Akatsuki, and since it was dealing with the safety of the village, they did have the power to order him from going to Naruto. When Jiraiya asked what their plan was, she simply gave him the same answer they gave Suan, that since he was so emotional attached to Naruto it would risk their operation but they would tell them all when the time was right. When council member Hojo Akira had suggested that Jiraiya train Sasuke, Jiraiya had punched him in the gut and sent him flying across the room saying, "You may be able to stop me from finding Naruto, but you will never be able to force me to ever train that traitorous little brat," and then left the room. Kurenai had then later on heard from Shizune that Jiraiya still went and tried to find Naruto through his contacts and sources, as well as through the Toad Summon contract that Jiraiya had allowed Naruto to sign. Unfortunately, none of Jiraiya's contacts or sources could find Naruto, and the Toad Summons had told him that although they knew Naruto was alive at the time due to the connection he had with the Toad Summons, for some reason they were unable to track him and find where he was or even reverse summon him to them. 4 months after Naruto's banishment, the news had spread to other countries. When certain countries and villages heard it they were furious, to say the very least. When Nami no Kuni, Wave Country, learned of Naruto's banishment they were furious beyond words with the hero of their country being banished for something that was not his fault. They then sent a message to Konoha stating that they were annulling the trade treaty that they had recently made, and were ceasing any and all trade with Konoha, and that all merchant and transport ships that were controlled by Nami no Kuni would refuse to work or trade with Konoha. Also, any and all mission that Nami no Kuni would have originally given to Konoha would now be given to Suna. This had, of course, caused Konoha a great deal of trouble since Nami no Kuni was strategically positioned for trade with Konoha, the fire country with other important countries. What was worse was, when the tyrant business's Mangato was killed, the people of Nami no Kuni took over his shipping company, giving them major control over the central elemental sea trading industry. Such a blow would severely hurt Konoha's economic structure. Asuma had told Kurenai that when Ashikaga Shin and Amako Taichi heard Nami no Kuni's message they made perfect imitations of wide-eyed gaping fish, as they realized how much this would hurt their businesses. Konoha had sent 3 different delegations to try and reopen negotiations with Nami no Kuni. Unfortunately, all 3 delegations were kicked out as soon as they arrived. The last one was even given a message from the representative of Nami no Kuni to Zuna which said, "If any Konoha ninja or person ever sent foot here to Nami no Kuni again he or she will be sent back in a box and we will then place a full embargo on your village." This, of course, had got the desired effect from Konoha and they had stopped trying. The next country to act was Cha no Kuni, Tea Country. The leader of the Wasabi clan Joriko used his influence over the daimyo of Cha no Kuni to send all his missions to Suna instead of Konoha. Since Joriko was said to have had been impressed by the boy when he met him the few times he did, he was very grateful to Naruto for helping to deal with the Wagarashi clan and helping them to win the shrine race. He had also known how important Naruto was to Suand and knew she did not want him to be banished. He had also forbid all trade with Konoha in Dagarashi port, which was an important trading place for Konoha, like with Nami no Kuni. This too had hurt Konoha greatly, since Cha no Kuni was a very important client of Konoha's and its loss meant losing a lot of valuable missions and money. Another country to react badly to Naruto's banishment was Haru, Yuki no Kuni, Spring, Snow Country. When the Lady Daimyo Kazuhana Koyuki had heard what had happened, she had been beyond anger with Konoha. She, herself, went to Konoha along with 200 of her samurai and 12 Yonki ninjas and demanded a meeting with both the Hokage and the council. She ranted for 20 minutes about how furious she was with them at banishing the hero of Yuki no Kuni over their simple hatred of the Kyuubi. After which, she informed them that she was annulling Konoha's alliance with both Haru, Yuki no Kuni and Yukigakure no Sato, the village hidden in the snow, which she had allowed to be maintained under the control of a few ninjas that had been loyal to her father before her uncle took control. She also annulled the technology trade agreement with Konoha, where Haru, Yuki no Kuni was planning on sharing some of its advanced technology with Konoha, as well as annulling all other trade agreements with them. This had, of course, greatly hurt Konoha, since many members of the council, especially members like Danzo and Kaharu, were almost drooling over the ideas of having weapons like chakra armor and the volley guns and using them to strengthen Konoha. The council tried to persuade Lady Koyuki from annulling both the alliances with her country and village and annulling the trade agreements, but she would not budge. She even told Jiraiya that she refused to star in the Ika Ika Paradise movie and that she would have some of her friends in the movie industry make sure that it would never be made, which caused the super pervert and Kakashi, when he heard, to each have 3 simultaneous heart attacks. Lady Koyuki soon after left the village, not wanting to stay in it any longer. Soon after that, Shibuki, leader of Takigakure no Sato, the village hidden in the waterfall, arrived in the village with 2 squads of Jonin ninjas demanding a meeting with the Hokage. From what Shizune had told Kurenai, Shibuki had been greatly angered by what Konoha had done simply because Naruto was a Jinchuriki. He had also stated that he had become disgusted at the way they had treated a good friend of his, especially one that had taught him how to be a real leader for his people. Not to mention that Naruto was a hero to his people, since he had saved them from the rogue Taki Jonin ninja Suion and his followers from taking over his village and stealing the hero water from them. He also stated that he and his people would never have treated their Jinchuriki Fu like that, since he stated that his people think Fu is a protector and friend to their village. Shibuki then informed Tsunade that he and the Takigakure Council and the villagers of Takigakure had agreed to annul their alliance between their villages since they wanted no part of Konoha. After saying his piece, he then left. This too left Konoha in an weakened state, since with the alliance with Taki gone as well as Yuki, that left Suna as Konoha's only shinobi ally. Of course, soon enough, that too changed. Almost a year after Naruto's banishment, Suna announced its new Kazekage, Sabaku no Gara Gara of the Sand, the Jinchuriki of the Shukaku, the Ikibi, the one-tailed beast. When Gara first heard of what had happened, he had been so greatly angered by what happened to Naruto that he left the village for the day and unleashed his anger and fury by creating a massive sandstorm that spread out over 20 miles in length, from what Karani had heard from a few Suna ninjas. Gara knew at the time there was not much he could do, but when he became Kazekage, he caused several painful political headaches for Konoha and its council. He, like many others, also took apart the treaty between Konoha piece by piece until the only thing left was the treaty between the 2 villages, where both sides would help each other in a time of war, but only if it affected both villages. Even though both Suna and Konoha were still allies, the relationship between the villages was very tense to say the least, especially since Suna was regaining its former strength and received new funding from their daimyo and getting new missions from Cha no Kuni and Nami no Kuni. A year after Naruto had been banished, there had still not been any sign of Naruto anywhere, although Jiraiya had still confirmed from the toads that he was still alive somewhere. Kurenai remembered during that time not much had changed in the village, other than when she and Asuma had gotten married. But soon after they had married, news had arrived about Naruto. When finishing a mission, a team of Jonins had found what looked to have been a battle in a clearing of a forest. Trees had fallen and scorch marks were on the ground as well as holes, but the most notable things that they found were black flames around the clearing that would not go out even with a water jutsu sprayed on it, and a torn piece of a black cloak with a red clouds on it along with some blood on it and a badly ripped orange jacket, also covered in a large amount of blood. When the team returned what they found to Tsunade, she immediately had the blood on the cloak and the blood on the jacket compared with certain samples. When the testing was done, it had proven everyone's worst fears true. The blood on the cloak was Uchiha Itachi's blood and the blood on the jacket was Naruto's blood, which confirmed that the Akatsuki had captured Naruto. Tsunade had quickly called Jiraiya to her office and tired to form a recovery team and a tracking team in hopes of tracking the Akatsuki before they extracted the Kyuubi from Naruto. Kurenai remembered that day well since she, herself had been on the team along with Kasuke, Asuma and Guy. Since they all were among Konoha's top shinobi and had experience fighting with at least 2 of the Akatsuki members. But before they left, Danzo and Koharu had stopped them, stating that, if they left they would ruin their plan to destroy the Akatsuki. It was at this point that Suand and Jiraiya demanded to know their plan to deal with the Akatsuki. The 2 elders then explained that when Naruto was being given the seals to stop him from using his chakra and keep him from telling anyone about Konoha, he was also given another seal that Danzo had some of his top seal masters create a seal that would be put over the seal that the Yondaime created to seal up the Kyuubi. Danzo's seal would only activate when the Kyuubi was being extracted from him by the Akatsuki, and once that happened, Danzo's seal would cause all of the Kyuubi's chakra to come out all at once, causing a massive explosion that, according to the seal master's calculations, would destroy anything from a 5 to 10 mile radius. Which would destroy the Akatsuki, and then Konoha would claim to have destroyed the Akatsuki by using a new weapon to do it, where the other villages would then fear to attack Konoha for fear that they would use that weapon against them. They also informed Suand and Jiraiya that they need not bother trying to find them, since if the Akatsuki had indeed captured Naruto, then they would have already began to extract the Kyuubi from Naruto and it would be too late for them to stop it. Kurenai scowled as remembered, when Danzo and Homaru had explained their plan, it made her sick at how they would use an innocent boy in such a way. Kurenai also remembered Tsunade's and Jiraiya's reaction to the news. Since once Suand and Jiraiya had heard the plan, they went ballistic, and it took both the tracking team and the recovery team as well as 50 Anbu, that had arrived once they felt Jiraiya's and Suand's killing intent, to hold them both back from killing the 2 elders, not that Karani or several others weren't tempted to do so and even joining them in killing the 2 elders. Soon after, both Sanin stopped trying to kill the elders, knowing that it would do no good, after which they just broke down and cried. About a week after finding Naruto's blooded jacket, there had been no sign of any kind of explosion or reports of one. This, of course, caused a great deal of concern among the council, since they had been informed of Danzo and Koharu's plan after Tsunade and Jiraiya had been told. When they learned this, most of the Kanheads as well as Homura had openly glared at the 2 elders, since they did not agree with what they did. Even the 2 elders had begun to get concerned with no sign or reports of an explosion. It was not until Jiraiya asked the Toad Summons about Naruto, that they had informed them that Naruto was dead since the contract with them had expired. This left 2 possible outcomes. 1. During the battle, Itachi might have accidentally killed Naruto with his Amaterasu, or the more likely one was that the Akatsuki had found Danzo's seal and removed it before they extracted the Kyuubi from him. But it did not matter. Danzo and Koharu's plan had failed and Naruto was dead. Jiraiya left the village a few days later for a while, since he found it too painful to stay at the time, while Tsunade locked herself in her office for several hours where people all over the village could hear her crying at the loss of Naruto. When word got out to the villagers and other ninja that the demon was dead, they started celebrating, crying out, "The demon was dead," but the party had not lasted long. When a teary-eyed Tsunade heard the celebrations, she went down to the village square where the celebrations were happening and struck her fist right into the ground and caused the ground to shake, and a fissure appeared in the middle of the village square, stopping all celebrations. After which, Tsunade then released a massive amount of killer intent on the fools, in which she told the fools that if there were any more celebration of Naruto's death, or if she caught anyone trying to celebrate Naruto's death, she would rip off their reproductive system, whether it be man or women, and then make sure that they would never choose solid food again either. After which, she let loose more killer intent to make her point clear, where she then went back to her office to be alone with her sorrow. When Kurenai thought of that day, she could not help but be saddened. She remembered when she, Asuma, and Guy went to tell Hinata and the others the news about Naruto's death. Kakashi had told them that they could tell the kids, since he had said to them that he had to go to the memorial stone. When the Konoha 12 heard about Naruto, most of them had been greatly upset at what happened. Ten had openly cried for her friend, as did Kiba and Choji. Others like Shino, Shikamaru and Neji showed no real emotions other than lowering their heads, since they preferred to keep such emotions bottled up inside and release them when they were alone. Lee had even stopped being himself for a few days and had hardly even said a word, which showed how much it affected him. Konohamaru and his team started to cry the moment they heard. Konohamaru had refused to accept it at first, but the proof could not be denied. Even Sakura and Ino were said to have been upset at Naruto's death, since after about 6 or 8 months since Naruto was banished, the girls slowly began to change. According to Asuma, Ino had changed due to a fight that she had with Shikamaru, when she had insulted Naruto in front of him, after which he had smacked her in the face and had told her how stupid she was. Shikamaru then went into a rant about how Naruto had been a loyal ninja to the village as well as a hero, but was treated like shit by idiotic fools like her. He even told her about how useless she was at being a ninja and that she should quit if she didn't wake up soon, since she spent her whole time dieting and make herself look good for Sasuke, who would properly never look at her in any other way than a foolish fangirl. He also told her that if she didn't start to act like a serious ninja and start to get stronger, she'd get herself and the rest of them killed when they tried to protect her, or she would get herself raped by an enemy ninja. When he had finished, Ino had broken into tears and ran home due to the truth and harshness of Shikamaru's words. Fortunately, soon afterwards, Ino came back and asked her and Asuma as well as her father for training, wanting to get stronger. Also, according to Shizune, Kurenai had heard that Sakura had also changed due to a verbal beating that Tsunade gave her when she was training her in medical ninjutsu, since Sakura had already started training with Tsunade before Naruto's banishment and had nearly stopped training her when she heard what Sakura had said and done to Naruto. According to Shizune, during the training with Tsunade, where she had been harsh and very strict on Sakura in it, Sakura had made a mistake that might have killed a patient, where Suon then gave her a harsh talking to about it. This of course caused Sakura to yell back at Tsunade, stating that she was blaming her for Naruto being banished and stating that he was a danger to the village and that they were better off without him. This of course had not gone over well with Tsunade when Sakura had finished. Since from what Shizune told Kurenai, Tsunade had grabbed the girl by the neck and slammed her against the wall and started to squeeze her neck, nearing choking her, after which Tsunade then gave her a similar but harsher verbal beating than Shikamaru gave Ino, in which according to Shizune, Tsunade had broken all the deluded beliefs that Sakura had built up for herself and broken Sakura from the inside. After which Tsunade threw her out of the room and told not to come back until she seen how stupid she had been. A few days later, Sakura came back into Tsunade's office and went on her hands and knees and begged for forgiveness, and telling Tsunade she had realized how much of a blind stupid girl she had been and wanted to get stronger so that she could fix the mistakes that she had made, one day find Naruto and help find a way to bring Naruto back and beg his forgiveness. After hearing Sakura's heartfelt apology and seeing how sincere Sakura had been, Suon took Sakura back, but had her train twice as hard as she had before, to which Sakura did not complain about. Kurenai had also heard that when both girls heard about Naruto's death, both had wept, since neither of them had got a chance to apologize to Naruto for what they had done to him and try in some small way to make it up to him. Both the ramen chief Tenchi and his daughter Ayame were also distraught at the news of Naruto's death. When they heard, they even closed down their store for several days due to their grief. Soon after, they reopened their stand and had a large picture of Naruto hung on their wall of their stand as a small monument to Naruto. They then even created a new ramen dish that they named after Naruto, the Uzumaki Supreme Ramen Special. It was also common knowledge among the villagers that no one was ever to speak bad about Naruto in front of them, especially Ayame. This unwritten law was created when one villager who had been having a meal at the ramen stand actually tried to take it down and smash the photo of Naruto, stating that they shouldn't have the picture of the demon around. Unfortunately for said villager, when Ayame caught him at what he was trying to do, she attacked him, where she then gave him the beating of all beatings that was so bad it could only be matched by the one Tsunade gave Jiraiya when she caught him at the first and only time he peeped on her in the hot springs. It got so bad that 3 nearby Jonin ninjas had to stand in and try and save the poor fool and stop her from killing him. When they tried to, she then turned on them, in which they were just barely able to hold her off and restrain her, but not without each getting several cuts and bruises from restraining her, since they found that Ayame was lethal with a kitchen knife. It took Suon herself to heal the idiot villager, although from what Kurenai heard, the poor fool was unable to eat solid food and now had a phobia of ramen, which was learned when a nurse one time brought ramen for a meal, and after seeing it he started to scream like a little girl and telling her to take it away, and the muttering things like, "I be good, I be quiet, please don't hit me." When word got out at what happened, the villagers wisely decided to keep their opinions about Naruto to themselves, especially around Ayame. Even the ninjas that still hated Naruto were too scared of her to say something bad about Naruto in front of her. When Iruka heard about Naruto's death, he had took several weeks of sick leave from the academy that he had stored up, since he had been so distraught at the news and was unable to teach for a while. He spent most of his time at home. Kurenai remembered when she and a few others visited him, they saw how pale he looked from not eating much, as well as black lines under his eyes from not getting enough sleep, and his eyes were also all puffy and red from crying most of the time. Even his place was a mess, with clothes thrown around and dirty dishes left in the sink. It took a while, but with the help of Konohamaru and some others, they were able to get Iruka out of his funk and back to teaching, although many noticed he still wasn't the same person he used to be, and he refused to talk to anyone about how he really felt for a while.